Hello, book lovers! Welcome to the 122nd episode of Authors Bookstores, presented by A Mighty Blaze. I am Kimberly Hensle Lowrance. I'm your host. I put together this show in partnership with fellow writer Joe Moldover. And we've been doing this for about 3 years, and we're thrilled that you're with us today, that you're tuning in to learn about wonderful books and to meet wonderful authors. One of those wonderful authors is our guest. Gonna over here go like this, Kimberly Garrett Brown. And just to make this clear for all of you, I'm going to be Kimberly in this interview, and Kim's going to be Kim. So just to make it streamline it. So Kim is the publisher and executive editor of Minerva Rising Press. Her work has appeared in anthologies including Black Lives Have Always Mattered, a collection of essays, poems, and personal narratives. And also your work has appeared in a number of other institutions and journals like Compass Literary Magazine, Chicago Tribune, The Rumpus, and elsewhere. We're going to talk today about Kim's first novel, Cora's Kitchen, which came out last year. And you're going to hold it up to show it to everybody. That's my favorite part, when the author holds up their book. Cora's Kitchen, it was a finalist for the William Faulkner William Wisdom Creative Writing Competition and the Louise Merriweather First Book Prize. And we're very excited to talk about this terrific book today. Kim has an MFA from Goddard College, and she currently is living in Boca Raton, Florida, where I imagine it is warm today. Is it very warm? How warm is it?
It is 73 degrees, which by South Florida standards isn't quite that warm. In fact, it's kind of hilarious. You will see people in sweaters and boots, and I'm like, wow, you've never lived in the North, I don't think.
Oh my gosh. Because from the Northeast perspective where I am, that's like run outside in bikini weather. Like, we love
For sure, for
amazing.
sure. But down here in South Florida, that's not the case.
Well, Kim, congratulations on Cora's Kitchen. The feedback about this book is great. So the Kirkus review in particular is really wonderful, and we're going to include that below. Kirkus calls the book powerful and highlights the excellent historical details, the really wonderful discussion of writing that is in this book. You speak to the timeless struggles of women who had ambitions that reach beyond traditional expectations. The main character, Cora, is perceptive, and the book has unexpected turns. And it's a wonderful depiction of female friendship and the desire for independence. Again, go check out the link below for the full review. It's really terrific. And there's another wonderful quote that you have from Erica Roebuck, who's the author of The Invisible Woman. And she said, "It has been said that the universal is found in the specific. And in Cora's Kitchen, all women will find their challenges and their longings expressed in unflinching honesty. Kimberly Brown's characters are faithful to a time, yet timeless, transcending the years to both painfully and beautifully illustrate the struggles women face to find and fulfill their vocations." Spellbinding. That's good.
It always takes me aback when I read those or they're read. I'm like, wow.
I know, right? It's so, because you work so hard on the book all alone. Right. At your desk writing the book, and then to send it out into the world and have it received so well. It must be a wonderful experience.
It really is. It's a dream come true. I can definitely say that.
Can you tell us a little bit about Cora's Kitchen? What inspired you to write the story? Where did the book begin for you?
The book began for me on two fronts. Women's friendships are very important and interesting to me. And so I loved the idea of writing about an unlikely woman's friendship, in terms of a Black woman and a white woman at a time where they probably would not have been friends per se. And so that was of interest to me, but also it was very much interesting to me, the idea of an ancestral mentor. That's something that, as a Black woman who wanted to write, I always longed for someone who was much like me, but an ancestor who maybe had the same type of dreams that I did. And not to say that there weren't, I just didn't know them. And so I thought, I'll create one, I'll write one. And that's kind of the beginning of what sort of led me to write Cora's Kitchen.
Can you give us a little summary of what the book is about?
Absolutely. It is about a 35-ish Black woman in Harlem in 1928 who has the dream of being a writer, but she's a mother. She has a job. She's married. She has, responsibilities to keep food on the table and a roof over their head. She's a partner with her husband in that regard. But in her secret, dreams, she wants to be a writer. And so she keeps a journal, but she's also sort of at the heart of the Harlem Renaissance. She works at the 135th Street Library. So she meets people such as, Langston Hughes or Zora Neale Hurston or all the Jesse Fawcett, all of those Redmond Fawcett, all of those people that she's kind of coming in contact with while she's at the library, which is almost, it's special, but then, it's one of those things where when you're close to it, it almost makes your hunger for it even more. And so she's at the heart of it, and she takes a risk and writes Langston Hughes, the poet, and he sort of spurs her on to kind of dive into her dream. And so it's about that journey, that along with this unlikely friendship with this wealthy white woman who sort of helps her sort of, I will say, live her dream in some way or sort of try to fulfill it.
I loved the letters back and forth between Cora and Langston Hughes. I mean, there was one point in the book where I stopped and I said, wait, did this really happen? Is this a real person? It just felt so, I was so immersed in the story. I was so caught up in it. And so they write back and forth to one another throughout the book. And one of the things they write a lot about is the craft of writing. And that's one of the things that's in this book that's so well done, is you see Cora essentially become a writer. That process of finding her voice. Can you talk a little bit about how that became a focus for you and how you decided to frame it with this mentorship that she has with Langston Hughes, how that idea came to you?
I don't know I knew I knew I wanted her to be a writer. And I wasn't quite sure in the beginning, as you never are, I think, when you first start a novel, where it's going or how it's going to end up. But one of the things that helped me to frame it a little bit was, Langston Hughes wrote I think it was his autobiography called The Big C. And in that, he talks about his own writing process. And I thought, that would be kind of cool to sort of incorporate that into what she's learning how to do, because I think for that to be, I started Cora's Kitchen when I was in the MFA program at Goddard. And so in a way, I myself was learning how to be a writer. And so it was very easy to sort of fold that into Cora's story too. So it was all very organic. It's funny, I really wish I could say I sat down and I was like, this is what we're going to do, but it doesn't, it's all very organic in terms of how it came to be. But I love, and maybe part of it too is, even though I was working on a master's in fine art, I already had a master's in written communications. I was a college professor at a liberal arts college outside of Chicago. And so I was teaching writing too. So it was like I was teaching writing, and I'm writing and I'm learning to write. Like all of those things just seemed to be the way that I thought about things. So it just made sense to me to include that,
And the advice that you have Langston offer Cora is such practical advice that I think if someone's out there and they want to become a writer and they're not quite certain how to start, they actually could take valuable lessons from this book. So I wrote down some of the things he suggests to her. He tells her to pay attention. Just pay attention around, like, what's going on, to be observant, to carry a notebook. And then probably my favorite thing that you have Langston say, which is relevant so often to writers, is you can't wait for inspiration to strike. You have to make the time to write. It just has to be something that you do, or else it'll never happen, right? That's really probably good advice for like anything you want in life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And a lot of the writer's advice that it was a mix of what, I taught, what I what I taught as a writing teacher, things I learned myself, but also, like I said, in the Big C, he talks a lot about his own process and things that he himself believes as a writer. And so I did bring those things into the book also, because I mean, you're right; those are very practical things. I mean, people wait. I think the inspiration things people wait. Like, I don't really know if I have anything to write about, but you just have to do it. You just have to sit down. You have to be observant, and things happen, and you notice thing, and the next thing you know, you're writing about it. It's it's very interesting. You have to be very intentional about it.
There's one point when Cora says to him, I had no idea writing was such hard work. There are days when I can't find the right words to express the thoughts in my head. I type and type, but nothing makes sense. It is exhilarating and frustrating at the same time. I loved that as well. I thought that I felt like that was maybe you talking to us. Like, this is hard. Like,
It
is
is.
hard.
I mean, it really is. I always love people who say, "Oh, one day I'm going to sit down and write a book," and I'm like, "Are you?" I mean, like, it just is one of those things where there are some days when I sit at the computer and I'm just like, why are you doing this? Like, why do you want to do this? And there are other days where you just sort of get into that zone and in that moment, and it's amazing, but you can't, you don't know which way it's going to be when you sit down, but you just have to keep at it.
And then the other thing you do related to that is we see Cora write several different short stories in the book, and then we see her struggle with why one is successful versus another and the choices that she's made. So again, just to call out to people out there who want to read a book about a writer and the process of becoming a writer, I think that part is done extremely well. It's really helpful to kind of to see her craft something and not be satisfied with it and then try to figure out why. So I thought that was really
And one of the harder things to do, even in the editing of the book, was not to go back to those short stories that she writes and fix what's wrong with them.
Yeah.
Because they can't be noodled with the same way I say I noodled with the novel, because it's got to be sort of showing process of her growing as a writer.
There's another part in their correspondence when Langston says to her, says to Cora, I am much better at my art when there's difficulty in my life. When everything is going well, I'm too busy enjoying myself. Discomfort and pain make me more alert. My emotions are more alert. I see the nuances of human interaction more clearly. I ask more questions. So much wisdom in this book. Can you talk a little bit about that and how you this thought about when life is maybe happy and good, it's harder to find your story, the story you want to tell?
So, I mean, at first, with all the full disclosure, the idea of that actually came from the autobiography, or Langston Hughes' autobiography, and him saying that he wrote better when things were not going well. He says that, and then I sort of built on that. As a writer myself, I think when things are not going well, I spend more time journaling and trying to figure out why. You know, trying to make sense of what's going on, try to, use it as my outlet, or try to, just even things like asking myself, how did I get here, or what am I going to do about this, or even just trying to make sense of it. There have been many pieces that I've had published. Even the essay that I wrote in Black Lives Have Always Mattered, it started off like me journaling, trying to make sense of something that happened. And then, it's like, oh, when I, go back to it, you go, oh, wait a minute. This, I think I could work on this and make this a piece. But because if you're having a great day, it's, I live down here in Florida. When I go to the beach and we're at the beach and I'm taking pictures, and I don't ever come home and feel like I have to write. I mean, I'm like, oh, that was a great day. Like, there isn't anything it's not that it's not inspiring, but you're just sort of in the moment. And I think that when things are not going well, when you're stressed, when there's challenges in your life, I think there's a lot more tendency to be introspective. And I think that as a writer, that's when you take down your pen. I wish that I could capture what it's like to have a great day at the beach, but maybe it's not that inspiring. I don't know, in terms of writing, but when you're talking about the human emotions and trying to work it out, there's so many little nuances there that gives you something to write about, really.
Speaking of that anthology, Black Lives Have Always Mattered, we put the link below for our audience to go check it out and pick up a copy. So the epigraph of this book is a poem by Langston Hughes called Troubled Woman. And do you have this poem? Do you want to read it to the audience?
I actually, oh yes, I
Oh, you
guess I
have it in
do.
the
I
book.
have it. I have it in the book. I was like, oh wait, no, I'm not at home. I don't have it. Oh, you have to give me a second because I can't read it. I can't see
Oh, that's
without
my
my
fault. I
glasses.
didn't give you a heads up that I was going to ask you to read it.
I will. Give me 1 second to get some
Yeah, no
some
problem.
glasses.
So I'd love for you to share it with the audience and then and tell people why what it was about this poem that inspired Cora's story.
Okay. She stands in the quiet darkness, this troubled woman, bowed by weariness and pain, like an autumn flower in the frozen rain, like a wind-blown autumn flower that never lifts its head again. And that's Troubled Woman, and it was in the Weary Blues in 1926.
Beautiful. Almost 100 years old. Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So what was it about this poem? What made you choose that as the epigraph? What made that, how did that connect for you to the story you wanted to tell?
I think for me personally at the time, I'm a mother of three. So at the time I was writing this or started writing this, I have three children, teenagers, which if you have teenagers, I don't have to say anything else.
You do not.
Three, I had three late teenagers and an adolescent. So it was just like, I worked full time as a professor dealing with also teenagers, freshmen in colleges. And just life in general, and as a working mother and wife, sometimes I just felt like that. I felt like that weariness. It really spoke to me in that way, and I thought about in terms of the reason I selected that poem for this novel is that I feel like that's what Cora is struggling with. All of those things that are about what it means to be a woman, and you figure in 1928, she didn't have the conveniences or the help or any of the things that we have today. So, but that doesn't mean that she didn't feel it in her heart in terms of of wanting more or being tired or just feeling like that. I always imagine, and I think there's a scene in the book. I imagine when you're in the kitchen and you've had this day and your hands are in the sink and you're just like, ah, like that is like what I wanted to capture. And I feel like that's what this poem does. That's what it does for me, is like it just, and to be written by a man, I just think it's amazing, just capturing that feeling of being overwhelmed.
I think you do very successfully convey all of the pressures that Cora is carrying, her full-time career, her family, the sort of practicalities of life in 1928. I mean, there's discussion at some point about like doing the laundry and just like, oh, it's so much work, so much more work than now, right? And how it just takes so much time. And so that sort of freedom that she would have to be creative, it's stepped out of her. She just doesn't have the energy. But the details that you include in the book for scene setting are so effective. And I was saying to you before we went live that I had a lot of fun Googling a lot of the things in the book, because you bring the Harlem Renaissance and Harlem to life so well. And I wondered, I read an article that said, first of all, there's a Rumpus article that you wrote. We're going to include that below, where you talk about a lot of the inspirations for the book. But you mentioned that you're a lover of history. And I wondered, had you always wanted to write a book set in this time period? Has it had been something that you had long wanted to do? Or did it creep up on you? How did that come to be?
It was always my favorite time period. So that was it, because there was something about the 20s, and also just the fact, the way that the creativity and things that happened in the Black community during that time was always very inspiring to me. And so then when I was thinking about writing this novel, I thought, oh, I should put it in this time period, because I love the 20s. Like that is just one of my favorite. It's just one of my favorite time periods. And so As I mentioned in the Rumpus article, I probably would have been a English or a history major had it not been for my first history professor. But Zap, I'm like, ooh, if I can't do this for 4 years. But so yeah, so now that's why I enjoy sort of researching it myself and just taking it where I want to take it.
The other thing you do a lot in this book is you give the reader a reading list of other books to check out. There's many references to Leaves of Grass by Walt Whitman, to The Awakening by Kate Chopin.
Chopin. Hmm.
I read that so long ago. Nella Larson, obviously Langston Hughes, so many other authors, and we're going to include a bunch of the links below. And I love that you included so many books to read, because I think often when we finish a good book, we think, oh, I want to read more. And you've included that for the reader to keep going if they want more about the time period. But it was The Awakening, that book, that seemed to really capture the imagination of Cora and Eleanor. And they're the two women who become unlikely friends in this book. And I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about the two of them, their connection, and the awakening, and why it's important to them. What do you think it says about who they are and where they are in their lives?
I think a lot of times what ends up happening, particularly when you have issues around race, is that you think that if you're this ethnicity or that ethnicity, that there's no connection. Like there's, I don't get you, you don't get me. But there are certain things that are similar. And I think as women, there are things that cross socioeconomics, they cross ethnicities and cultures where it's very similar. Like I can read a book about a woman who is from the Middle East, an Arab woman, and I can relate to what she's, my day-to-day existence might be different than hers, but I can relate to some of the things that she is feeling. And so I wanted to draw on that, particularly in our country where race sometimes is that big divider, to understand that we've got, as I think it's Maya Angelou says, that we've got more in common than we have differences. And I think that the awakening, when you have Edna, who is a woman struggling with that, with what it means to be a woman and have her own desire, to have that be that uniting, that unifying thing for Cora and Elizabeth, or Eleanor, I'm sorry, for Eleanor, it's just a fun thing. And that book, I mean, really The Awakening was such a groundbreaking, unbelievable book for its time period. I mean, to have, Kate Chopin writing about these issues in a time where it wasn't okay to be writing about that. And for a long time, that book was banned and hidden, and it was, but it's so powerful in terms of just seeing yourself as a woman. And I thought that'd be a nice way for them to be able to talk about what their struggles were around something else, around a book kind of thing.
Excellent. It was a great device. I thought it was wonderful to see the way, especially Cora, really sees, well, it changes how she sees Eleanor and how her life is, and sort of opens her up to the different problems that they each have, and the similarities, as you said. So I thought that was really great. Now tell us about your road to being a published writer. So you've been a college professor, you've done many different roles in your life. You're currently the executive editor of a press. I want to talk about that, but I'm really curious about how this book came to life. What was your road to publishing? Had you always thought, I'm going to write a book? And did you carry this with you for a long time? Was it an easy birth of Cora's Kitchen? Was it a challenging one? How did that process work out? But you're laughing, so I feel like there must be a story there. There's always a story for every writer, right?
It's a long story. It's funny. I don't know if you know this, but I'm sure you do. Judy Blume's book, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. They're making a movie of it soon.
Oh, Kim, I know.
Which I figure most women in general, but women writers specifically know about it. Back when I read that, when I was 12 years old, I loved what she was able to do. I felt not alone in being a 12-year-old girl at the time. And I'm like, I want to do this. I mean, I want to be a writer. And from that point on, I wrote short stories or different, things like that. And probably when I was just as I was starting college, I started playing with the idea of writing novels. I never actually, finished anything. Um, but I just kept going back to it because I still had, my life and job and kids or whatever. But I always wanted, in fact, this year, every year one of my New Year's resolutions would be to publish a novel or publish a book. And when I was writing my resolutions or goal for this year, I was like, you don't have to put that on your list this year, which is so
Oh,
amazing. I mean, I was like, that is really cool, like not to have it on there because it was, it was always on there. Even in, after you've written the book, as you know, I would love to say you write the book, you put a nice little period on the end and you stick it in an envelope and that's it. I mean, that's not at all the case. You're revising it, you're trying to get an editor, or not an editor, an agent, you're sending it to contest, like all of these things, and
yes.
you're getting rejection after rejection, and no's, and this is a great book, but it doesn't fit, like, all of these kinds of things, just until you almost feel like this is pointless. There are plenty of times where like I shouldn't do this, but you just keep pushing it. So it was a long haul from the time that I finished probably the second or third draft to publication was probably about 10 years. I think it was about 10 years. So it was a long, and there were a lot of, there was a lot of life in there. So it wasn't like I was, you know, um, but it took a while. And even I think for me personally, I was a lot like Cora, like I'm in the book business and life. I'm a writer. I taught writing. I run a women's press. So I'm all in that, but then I couldn't get my book published. And so that was, it felt frustrating, for a while, but it was just a matter of trying to keep at it and, keeping the faith, so to speak, about just keep pursuing it.
Oh, I love so much that this is a goal that you didn't need to put on your list for 2023. I love that. Oh, that's
Yeah,
so
I mean,
wonderful. That's really,
yeah, that
oh,
was that was exciting.
yeah, that is. You know that we had Judy Bloom on the show.
Did you? I'll have to go back. Is it on? Can you watch it?
Oh yeah, we've just put the link
Okay.
below.
Okay, perfect.
Oh yeah,
Oh
I totally
gosh.
understand when you reference "Are you there, God? It's me, Margaret." I totally get that.
And
That's
you know what? It's so funny because people ask me that question. I feel like you always say that. It's kind of a boring answer, but I can't not say it
no.
because it's so true. It's so it just and it just
Yeah.
it definitely had a lot to do with why I wanted to write because she just made you feel not so alone, and I wanted to
Mm.
be able to do that too.
Well, and that book is 50 years old. So
I
think
I
all
know.
me too. But
There's also that.
but just the fact that there are I know you're not the only woman who would cite reading that book as an inspiration for a creative pursuit, right? Like it impacted so many people. So I love the process of like the idea of thinking of you as a 12-year-old reading that book to now we're here talking about your book. So that's really exciting. And I'm honored that you're here to talk to us. So thank you.
Oh, I'm great. I love being here. This is great. I love this conversation.
So now tell us about Minerva Rising Press. So as I mentioned, you're the executive editor, and tell us a little bit about what you publish, what your focus is.
So Minerva Rising Press is a women it's a women press. Um, it basically it started back in 2012 as a way to celebrate women, the wisdom and the creativity that we all have, the different roles that we wear, and how we try to make our lives work, or just our stories. And so it it grew out of rejection. um, yeah, I tell the story that it was Christmas Eve in 2011. I was getting dressed to go to church, and it was back when our every time my phone would ding with a new email, I would pick it up and see
Right.
what the email was. Well, because I also write short stories. Someone sent out their rejections Christmas Eve. Like, who
Oh,
does that?
ugh.
And so I was very distraught about it and upset, and while I was sitting, at church or later that evening, I was thinking to myself, I should start my own literary press, is basically. And, through conversations with my husband, who was like, yeah, that's a great idea, which usually that's not the response, you know, but it just grew out of that. And basically as a way for what I thought of as women like myself who just wanted to write stories about what it's like to be a wife, a mother, or what like whatever. And um it's been really well received. We have published 22 journals over the last 10 years, two memoirs, a short story collection, two novellas, and 8 or 9 chapbooks, poetry chapbooks. And so it's really been sort of more than I could have ever imagined in terms of the way that people have accepted it and been interested in it. And just the opportunity, one thing I love as the executive editor is those emails that I'll get from a woman who will say, I got the acceptance, and I was about to give up, or I didn't, those kinds of things. And it just really warms my heart to be in that field, helping other women writers live live their dreams. So.
Oh, that's wonderful. So to our audience, we include the link to the press below so you can go check it out. So Kim, that the title of this show is Authors Love Bookstores. So I'd love to ask you about independent bookstores that you admire, that you want to give a shout out to. And I understand you have 3 you want to mention.
Yes,
so can you tell us a little bit about the bookstores that you are excited about?
And this is in no order in terms of one being, more important than the other. Anderson's bookshop in Naperville. I lived in Naperville for about 12 years. Loved the shop. Just the greatest memories of, taking my kids there and getting books like, Harry Potter new books. So just the way that a independent bookstore not only makes it approachable, the books that you have there, but they have such the variety that's not necessarily just this is the big name person, and so their books are there. So Anderson's in Naperville. Also, there is a new bookstore that I just learned about and had visited. It's called Page's Bookshop, and it's in Detroit. Cute little bookshop. Just I didn't get to spend as much time as I would have liked to have spent there, but it's just those little independent bookstores. You just feel like you just want to nestle into a corner, and they have a rocking chair and there was a cat on there, and I'm like, I want the cat to move so I can, so I can sit here with a book. So that one's in Detroit, and I would say Foxtails in Woodstock in outside of Atlanta probably is just when I walked into that bookshop the first time, I felt like it was like I had stepped into a fairy world. Just the way the bookstore is decorated and the books and the booksellers there are just amazing. The books, they know the books that are on their shelves. They're just not there happenstance. They can tell you, this book has this and you're going to be really surprised. And like I have bought so many books on their recommendation alone. It's been amazing. And I try, and it's hard sell, but I try to tell people, like, go to an independent bookstore. Do not buy it from who. Go to go to an independent bookstore. It's an outing. It's an outing. It's just to be able to learn about books that you may not see. You're not going to find them if you're scrolling on the computer necessarily. But those are my favorite. I could probably sit here and talk to you about independent bookstores. I was just telling my husband the other day, because one of the things I do when I travel is I try to find, an independent bookstore.
Yep, me too.
In fact, I was in Prague a couple years ago visiting a friend. And even though I knew I didn't speak the language, I saw this bookstore and I was like, well, I have to go. I have to go in here, even though they actually did have an English section. So I bought some books. But that's like a go-to place whenever I travel, is to go to the independent bookstore. In the area. So
Well, me too. I do exactly the same thing. I think it gives you a great flavor for the community, especially the recommended lists. And so below the broadcast, we've included links to all the bookstores you mentioned. Also to buying Cora's Kitchen from these bookstores, especially Anderson's has some signed copies. So go buy your copy right away. And then we actually did have Anderson's on the show. I think, I don't know, a year and a half ago, maybe, with author Sonali Dev. So we'll put that link below. So speaking of bookstores, it's a great transition. We obviously want to encourage everyone to go buy Cora's Kitchen. And then we also want to ask you, what are you reading right now? What books to you are inspiring you? Or maybe are coming out later this year that you're looking forward to reading?
I can tell you there's one of the books that I got recommended by Karen at Foxtails. It's called Hum If You Don't Know the Words. And I was blown away. It is about this an unlikely friendship, really. A young white little girl and a Black woman in South Africa during apartheid. And oh my gosh, it is just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I cannot say enough about that book. I highly recommend it. And the other one, which I guess I'm reading outside the country now. The other one that I'm not going to use the word enjoy because it's tough subject, but was just beautiful and so thought-provoking is In Every Mirror She's Black. And I don't remember the author's name, but it's by a woman who lives in Sweden who is Nigerian. And it's also a just very well-written, thought-provoking book.
Wonderful.
And in terms of what I'm reading now, I'm kind of a blast from the past. I'm reading Fahrenheit 451 now. Is what I'm working my way through now.
It's good sometimes to go through the backlist, right, and read those old classics that maybe we've overlooked in high school or college.
Absolutely, yeah. or found a way not to, and somehow we're like, wait, we should have read that.
Yeah. I always want to challenge myself to read the books I hated in high school, to reread them now to see if I still hate them or maybe I see them completely differently, right? Like there's something about that like reading books at different points in our lives and what we take from them probably.
Yeah, because I think we bring a wider breadth of knowledge and understanding. I have one book on my list, Surfacing by Margaret Atwood. When I was in college, we were supposed to read it, and I just did the bare minimum, and that's on my list to go back to because I feel like I missed an opportunity there. So
mine would be As I Lay Dying.
Is that Ernest? That's Ernest Gaines, right?
No, Faulkner.
No, Faulkner. I'm thinking about another one. Yes, Faulkner. Yeah. Yes.
I don't remember liking it very much, and so I have it. I'm going to put it on my list. You're inspiring me. I'm going to put it on my list for 2023 and see if I have a different perspective now that I've lived a little. See if I can challenge 16-year-old me to see life a little differently. We're coming to the end of our time together, Kim, and I wanted to I know, and I wanted to ask you, again, a shout out for Cora's Kitchen.
Thank you.
That the link is below. What do you hope people take from this book? When a reader gets to the last page, what's the feeling that you hope that they have?
I hope that they have a desire to go back and read some of those books off of the list. That would be my that would be my hope, that in some way that it would bring back some of the books that maybe have gotten lost over the time, that they would have a curiosity and go back and read those books.
Wonderful. And what are you working on now? Is there another book?
It is. It's different time period. I'm thinking it's still in the very beginning discovery stages, but I think it's going to straddle current time in the 70s, which surprisingly to me, it's also history now. It's historical. It's just like, that's 50 years or so, or more. So it's at this point, it's looking like it's going to do that, the 2 time periods. So.
Oh, fun. That's how I feel whenever someone says the 1980s is historical. I'm like, no, that's just no.
It's crazy, isn't it?
I have a hard time with that. I have a hard time. Well, Kim, it was so wonderful to talk with you, to get a chance to talk about Cora's Kitchen. Again, I really enjoyed this book. I was really caught up in it. And if you're out there and you're watching today's show and you want to write yourself, take a look at Cora's Kitchen. There's some really wonderful advice about the life of a writer. And I think the good reminder that if you want something, you have to make it a priority and make it happen. And also Cora's story is just really inspiring. So thank you for being.
Well, thank you. I loved being here. It was fun.
Oh,
I
good.
can't believe it. I can't believe the time is up.
I know it goes fast. So to our audience, thank you for being with us today. If you liked today's show, and we certainly hope that you did, please subscribe to A Mighty Blaze on Facebook to get notified about all of our other events. If you're not a Facebook person, hop over to our website, amightyblaze.com, to sign up for our newsletter. It goes out once a week and gives you a rundown of all of our interviews. We will be back in 2 weeks with our 123rd episode of Authors Love Bookstores. We're going to be going to Scotland. So please, I know, we get to the UK occasionally, so we're pretty excited about that. So please join us then. We'll be, again, live at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. And until then, be well and keep reading. Thank you. Thanks, Kim.
Thank you.